Hi guys, how's it going? I'm Riley. I'm an alcoholic. Um, so yeah, I guess I'll just start from the top here. Um, Starting from the beginning of my childhood. Um, to be honest, I had a really great childhood. Like a great upbringing, uh, great family that I get along with very well today. Um, that being said, I would say somewhere around the age of, you know, 5th grade or so, I definitely started to, develop some issues with like things like, anxiety, depression. And I think that's around when I started to feel very disconnected from the people around me, despite the fact that, I never had trouble like making friends or anything. I always had like people around, but for the most part, like, I'd always have that thing in the back of my head that was like, "Oh, like, these people don't actually like me," or, I would just like even, like, my closest friends, I can remember thinking that they actually didn't really like me very much or, things like that. Just a lot of, I guess, negative thoughts at that point. And, so I guess in addition to that, things that kind of set the stage for, my alcoholism. I would say like one of my, just like I definitely did start like, you know, I guess doing some addictive behaviors. I definitely would say that one of my first addictions as a young kid was video games. As well as, I remember in middle school I got really into like riding bikes, and it'd be like I'd, you know, immediately as soon as I would get home, just get on my BMX bike and skip homework and just hang out with my friends all day. So it was like anything that I was really into at the time, I would just like be doing that all the time, and I would put off like any responsibilities I had. And so fast forwarding to the age of 15, um, you know, that was around when I first started, using drugs and alcohol. Um, so I remember being like 14 years old, and I was like, "Oh, I'm never gonna." I had some friends that started like smoking weed and stuff, and I was like, "Oh, I'm never gonna do that." And it took like maybe a year before I was doing it, and um, you know, I guess I pretty, starting out, I do remember like my first time drinking. I didn't drink like a very large amount. And I remember thinking to myself, I was like, that wasn't really enough. Like I immediately had that thought of like, next time I have to like actually, really go all out. And what I didn't know at the time was that like I would always be thinking it wasn't enough. So like that, I never really reached that point that I wanted to, which is I guess kind of what makes me an alcoholic. But, at that point, at that age, I didn't start doing it every day, mainly just because couldn't really get my hands on it and I didn't want my parents to find out or whatever. But that quickly kind of went out the door around the age of 16, I would say, when I did start drinking every pretty much every night at that point and smoking weed and stuff. And um, I won't get into, I guess, like substances as much. I'll kind of just focus mainly on the alcohol portion, but those are also a part of my story. And, so I didn't really face any consequences at that point, but very quickly, around the age of 17, was when things really got bad for me. Um, so at that age, I started experimenting with a whole bunch of other stuff in addition to, still drinking every night and stuff like that. Um, and, I remember I would have, those like few friends that always were like a little worse than me. And I'd be like, oh, well, I'm not doing what they're doing. So, I'm good. But on the outside, I mean, like, the first big consequence that I, like, experienced at that age was I totaled my car, at the age of 17, and, I think that for a normal person, they'd be like, "Oh, yeah, like, that was pretty horrible. I'm never gonna ever, do substances again, or at least, like, reel it in a little bit," and I did have that thought that I was like, "Oh, maybe I should, like, chill out with this," but what it ended up looking like was I was like, "Oh, I'm just gonna not use that substance that I totaled my car on, but I'm still gonna, like, drink and do other stuff." And, that didn't even last very long, because then I rationalized into my head, I was like, "Oh, well, I don't have a car, so, I can go back to doing, what I was doing." And, yeah, I guess it didn't scare me as much as it should have. And, yeah, so I guess kind of, again, moving forward, things just continued to progress. I went I'd gotten into, like, a pretty decent college, and, decided to go there. Didn't last very long. It lasted 3 whole months before I dropped out and said, you know, I told my parents, like, I'm not looking to really waste your money here, like, I'm not doing anything here, I figured I may as well not waste any more of your money, and just come home. And, ended up back in the parents' basement just getting messed up all day. And after a couple 2 or 3 months of that, my parents were kinda like, "All right, we gotta figure something out for you." And, at the time, I just thought, "Oh, it's like mental health problems or stuff like that," anything besides, alcoholism or drug addiction, I thought was the problem. And, so, like, my parents sent me away to this place, and, I went to my first AA meeting there at the age of 18. And, I did try to be open-minded towards it, but, I think at that age, it was very easy for me to be like, to look around the rooms and see a lot of people that were, for instance, like, in their 30s, that had, like, experienced a lot more than me, and, I kind of was comparing myself to them, and, thinking like, "Oh, I'm not actually that bad yet." And, I can remember, like, I think I got a sponsor, but I didn't really, like, do any step work. I didn't think I was bad enough to have to do step work. I was like, "I'll just read these spiritual books and, uh, not pray, or, believe in God or anything, and I'll probably be fine." And as soon as I left that treatment center, I then relapsed, which kind of led to going back and forth, between treatments from, the age of 18 to 21. And I think really what brought me to that point of, willingness this time around was really that last 5-month run when I was 20 years old. Um, I had accumulated 11 months, um, before I went on that run. And that time I actually did do some step work, but, I really did not put a full effort in. I was in a long-term treatment center at that point, and I would kinda say was forced into doing the steps, and I didn't really, like, have any interest in doing them beyond getting people off my back and kinda just getting through this treatment center so I could continue doing what I wanted to do after I got out, and then my parents would be able to think I was doing fine and everything. So, basically, I, at that point, really struggled with the spirituality aspect of it. The whole God thing was something that I was very against. As they say in, like, the big book, like, violently anti-religious. I was like, basically, um, viewing a lot of it as like, oh, this is like trying to get you to believe in Christianity and blah blah blah. But, I definitely became more open-minded about that this time around. But long story short, I basically threw together kind of a half-assed fourth step, excuse me, read it to my sponsor, and I didn't really feel anything from it. I it because I knew that I kind of just threw something together. I didn't really have my heart in it. I left things out, and I think I probably felt worse than before I even, if I had just not done it at all, just because I knew that I didn't actually do it the right way. And I think that that's kind of my problem, is that I have to, like, I would come into the rooms, people would be like, "Hey, don't do this thing. This led me to relapse," and I'd be like, "Oh, well, I guess I got to test that out myself first before I, like, you know." So I kind of just thought, like, "Oh, I'll just be good doing that," but it didn't last very long after that. And for the last 3 months of that 11-month span, I was really just white knuckling it, thinking about drinking and doing drugs all the time, and just like trying to distract myself from not doing it. Um, so, in a lot of ways, I think that that's kind of what I viewed sobriety as being at that point. So, because I had never really gotten that relief of like the obsession being removed, or which at the time I thought was bullshit too, because I had never experienced it. So, how can that be a real thing? It's kind of a theme for how my mindset was at that time. Like, but uh, where was I going with that? Yeah. So anyway, I kind of thought that if that's what sobriety is like, then I don't really want anything to do with it. And I also kind of got to a point where um, I had basically, gotten so far away from everything that I convinced myself I was not an alcoholic and I could control, what I was doing. And I think I really needed that last 5 month run to convince me otherwise, to just like bring me to a level of pain, and just like, I guess, like just living a life that I never could have ever imagined would be as horrible as basically, like, when I took a look at my life when I first got sober this time, I could never have imagined, like, when I was in high school, that it would ever get that bad. I kind of took a look at myself and I thought, I was about to be 21. A lot of my friends were like nearing the end of college, and I couldn't even stay sober in treatment centers. That was kind of where it took me at the end. And you know, uh, not really trying to get into a bunch of war stories, but like there was, you know, things such as like living in my car, just kind of obviously, like, I would just stop talking to my family. And I really put them through a lot of pain at that time as well. But I think in many ways I kind of needed uh, the pain that I went through on that last bender to be willing to stop this time around. And yeah, I just remember coming in this time. It was the first time that I actually was scared of relapse. Like all the other times that I would be sent to treatment by my parents, or, end up in treatment, I was never like that scared of relapsing at all. I kind of thought that it was inevitable that I was going to, but like this time around, like I was really at that point where, again, like not getting into specifics, but like, I was getting into like doing things that were going to kill me. So, that was really, I was really just starting out with those things. So it kind of felt like once I finally ended up in treatment, I was, and again, this time ending up in treatment, it was like a hard decision of whether or not I should just go be homeless or go to treatment. Like that's how bad things had really gotten. And but once I arrived at this treatment center, I kind of thought that it was going to be just another crappy one because I was out in California. I had been to a couple that weren't very good. But I actually ended up in this place where, they were kind of like throwing the big book at us. And it was, I think, in a lot of ways, very helpful for me because I was kind of expecting to go to another place where I could just get away with whatever and, you know, get back on my feet, get some money together, and go back to what I was doing. But the fact that I ended up in a place where, they kind of were really stressing the book on us and stuff, it reminded me of, you know, it was hard. I'd like to say it was hard for me to look away at that point, you know, because it reminded me of like what I was missing out on, I guess, what I what my life could look like if I, you know, ended up doing the right thing this time. Because I had obviously seen, the steps work for people. And obviously, like I said, I did do some steps, but I knew when I was being honest with myself that I didn't really do the steps because like I said, I didn't really pray at all. I had kind of thrown together a very half-assed fourth step. So I think coming around this time, I was like, you know what? Drugs and alcohol, like they're always going to be there. Like it's that, they're not going anywhere. But um, that being said, like getting sober might not always be like this. The option of actually being sober might not always be there if I go back out because I might not come back. I might die, or I might just stay out there for maybe the rest of my life for a very long and what I could foresee as very miserable life. So I think that was almost scarier than death in some ways. So I guess, with all this, I guess, like pain that I just been through and like kind of the fear I was feeling around relapsing this time, I was like, I want to at least, you know, this time do the steps like 100%, like to the best of my ability. And then, like I said, then if they don't work, I can just be like, all right, see, I told you it doesn't work. And then like go back to what I was doing. And I think in a way, maybe I needed to like view it that way early on because I didn't want to view it as like I have to stay sober for the rest of my life. And I think that's kind of why, you know, they stress the importance of one day at a time because, I couldn't look at a big picture point of view at that point. I had to just look at this is what I'm doing right now. And like, I want to at least see if it works because I might not get this opportunity again. So, um, that being said, even early in sobriety this time, there were some close calls. Um, I initially completed a 30-day in California because I was out there for a little bit. And after that, my parents kind of said, how about you come to this? How about you go to this, PHP, IOP type thing in New Hampshire? And I'm from Connecticut, so at that point I had been all over, and I think my parents just kind of wanted me to be closer to them. So at first I was kind of not wanting to do that, but realistically, I knew so many people that were doing the wrong thing in California at that point that I kind of recognized maybe it would be good to just start out somewhere fresh and um, just so that I know I don't have anyone that I can immediately hit up. And so, something told me it was the right idea. And I came out to New Hampshire. And for the first couple months, well, probably the first month or so, I really wasn't doing much at the treatment center. I didn't get a sponsor. I kind of started like reverting. And that was about, I really got to a point where, I had like a bag packed and I was ready to, just bounce from this place. And it wasn't anything like super profound that like kept me there. It was really just like my phone was about to die and I had to charge my phone. And then because I had to wait for my phone to charge and I was just sitting there with my thoughts, eventually the thought of like me going to basically be homeless with probably $100 to my name, decided maybe that's not the best option and maybe I should like talk to somebody instead, you know? Um, so, I went downstairs and I just like told the people, I was like, I just had a bag packed. I was about to leave. Like, I need help, like, and this kid that I was in treatment there, you know, with, he kind of took me under his wing a little bit, introduced me to the person who's my sponsor now, which again was being an anxious person, especially early in sobriety, asking someone to be my sponsor was something that was pretty out of the question. Um, it was always a very tough thing for me to do. So this kid basically forced me to talk to the person that's my sponsor now. And, you know, I'm very grateful that he did that because I think it happened at just the right time. Because as I said, I was really on the verge of relapse at this point. And, luckily I was able to find a sponsor that immediately I just vibed with. And it was like a perfect, you know, fit, I guess. And I kind of ended up finding that um, I was very comfortable, with him, which I think is very important with a sponsor. And it's something that a lot of people struggle to find. And for some reason, something about him just it made it very easy for me to open up to him about um, a bunch of stuff. And I think that that was what I needed because, like I said, I had kind of haphazardly done some steps in the past, but this time I recognized like I want to at least say that I gave this 100% try, and then if it doesn't work, then I guess I'll go back to what I was doing, and luckily, um, I kind of immediately got into you know the work with him, and um, yeah, I mean, I definitely like started seeing the benefits pretty quickly. I mean, obviously I was still struggling, that especially that first year is can be pretty tough. By the way, my sobriety day is June 26th, 2017. So, um, and I turned 21 in the 30 day I was at, so I've never legally had a drink, but um anyway, yeah, that first year, even through doing the work, was still pretty rough. I had cravings for a large portion of that time, even through, getting into the work and stuff. And there were some close calls, but I think it was really the network I had built that I would honestly say is like more to I give them more credit than I give myself sometimes, honestly, like because I think that in some ways, if I didn't have those people, it's hard for me to imagine if would have made it through those rough points. And um, that's something I've always been very grateful about. Uh, and I think in a lot of ways, it kind of strengthened my belief in a higher power, just because of the way that once I started like trying to do the right thing and really just like doing everything that was asked of me, like things just lined up, like people came into my life at just the right times. They said just the right thing to me, like right when I was about to like, break. And like, I like looked at that whole like series of events that led to me getting sober and like early on meeting the right people at the right times. Like there's just so many things that um, lined up in such a way that it was hard for me to not um, just think that maybe there was something else, working. Um, and it was something that I've always felt really grateful for and that I wish everybody could experience as well. Um, but yeah, I mean, not getting too deep into how my experience was with all of the steps, but I guess, like I mentioned before, I kind of didn't put a full effort into the fourth and fifth. And after completing my fifth step this time around, it uh, was much more of a weight lifted off my shoulders and something I could feel proud of after completing. And that definitely like influenced me to really just keep going with it. And yeah, I guess the other thing that I'll say before I kind of wrap up is like another thing that my sponsor kind of stressed from like before I was really even through my fourth step was helping other people, which I think was also one of the number one things that helped me early on. And even before I was really through my fourth step, I was really trying to like reach out to people I knew that weren't doing well that I'd just been in treatment with, and like in some cases I had the opportunity to like give them a ride to treatment or things like that. And it was doing stuff like that that again was a big piece of why I'm sober today. So um yeah, I guess I'll wrap it up with that. But yeah, I guess my point is do the steps. So it worked for me. Thanks, guys.